What's up, friends and family? Today I want to talk about how Elon Musk made me around like 100K, but potentially lost me 100K too. So whatever you think about the guy, who really cares, right? He's pretty big into a lot of companies.
He's also doing the rockets. He likes rockets, and he does good at rockets too, by the way.
He's like running Tesla, Twitter, SpaceX, whatever, right? Just full disclosure, when he was popular back in like 2014 or something like that, I didn't really care much for the guy. When everyone started hating him around like maybe 2020-ish, I thought he was pretty funny. He posted a couple of funny things, and I thought it was kind of cute, you know? But that has nothing to do with what his business decisions are, pretty much, because he actually helped or affected my portfolio, my stock portfolio, a lot, because I never really invested in Tesla. I actually did a report on Tesla in school. It was, I believe, 2013 or 14. Whatever the price was of Tesla, it was around $30, $35. And they're about to do an earnings report in like one of those months or something like that. And then I was in school writing a report on Tesla, figuring out like how many cars they're making, how many cars they're selling, and pretty much trying to guess what their valuation is and how much revenue they could realistically make over their lifetime. And I got it all wrong. Who knows, right? Like no one knew back at that time. And I predicted that the price would probably, even at $35 at the time, was way overvalued. Way overvalued. Because they're selling no cars as a car company. And because of that, like, how could they be valued a lot more? And earnings report comes out, they blow it out of the water that summer. So I did the report in my junior year, and then that summer I was interning somewhere, and on the TV you see Tesla at like $300 or something like that. I forget the exact numbers. It was either 200 something or 300 something, but essentially like completely wrong, right? But who cares? That's just a school project. I didn't lose any money on it, and I didn't gain any money from it. And it keeps going up all those years. I started investing seriously around like 2016, October, around that time. And that's where I made my first big investment, and that was in Twitter. So this was when I got my first job, because anything before your first job, all the money that you like invest or whatever, the like $100 you invest as like in fifth grade or whatever, it doesn't really mean anything, right? Because it's not a substantial amount of money. But I started putting serious money into Twitter starting in October 2016. And I just kept putting more and more money into it because I really believed at the time Twitter was destined for something great, and the price wasn't that high. They IPO'd around 2013, and all the IPO hype, it went completely to the gutter. It was, I think the IPO price, I just had to look it up. It was $26 per share during their IPO, but on the first day it traded up to like, I think 70 something or something like that. And I was actually interviewing at a bunch of banks at the time. Some of the questions that came up was, what did you think of the IPO? That's like what they were asking me. And whatever, I talked about it. Then I asked them a question, and I was like, hey, your bank ran the IPO for this or managed the IPO for this. And do you think you should have set the price a little higher because the price went up so much? And they're like, I guess we could have, but it doesn't really make a difference because everyone made a ton of money that day. And ever since then, the stock went down up until 2016. It went all the way down to, I bought it at $16.77. That was my first purchase of it. Of course, I didn't have like that much money at the time, but every month I keep putting money into it. And social media is a very funny thing. There was a streamer, his name was Reckful, and he was also investing in Twitter at the time. And he compared the price of Meta or Facebook to Twitter. And at the time, Twitter's market cap was around $10 billion and Facebook's was around $100 billion. And Reckful was saying, how can one be worth 10 times the other? And obviously Facebook does a lot more stuff, but he's like, would you rather have 10 Twitters or one Facebook? And that got me thinking. Obviously Facebook is profitable. Market cap doesn't mean everything. And Facebook's making a lot of money and they're growing. So there's nothing wrong with Facebook. I, full disclosure, eventually ended up investing in Facebook a little later. But Twitter was not making any money, and they're actually losing a lot of money at the time. And there wasn't really a path forward for them. They're struggling really hard, but I noticed some key things that happened. Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO of Twitter at the time and the founder, he was buying back shares at $16 per share, approximately. In 2017, I have something up here which says he bought around like $10 million worth of shares. It averaged out to be around that price. What does that tell you? The previous years, he was selling stock. So He was selling at around $40 a share for the past 2 years, cashing out like a $15 million position. And then all of a sudden, he starts buying around like $10 million worth of Twitter shares at $16. That was in 2017. And as I was holding my investment, I'm just like, better buy more, better go all in, because people sell for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes you need to pay your rent. Sometimes you think the stock is too high. Sometimes you just want to buy a yacht. But people only buy for one reason, and that is they think the stock is undervalued and going to go up. And because of that, I was like just even more confident in my investment in Twitter, especially even though I held it for like a year and it was like up and down a bit. It went up a bunch and then it went all the way back down to the original investment amount that I put in, or the initial price that I bought in at, which was around $16. And I was just like, holy cow, like what is going on here? I think there's an inefficiency in the market because Twitter was being used everywhere. And the theme with tech companies is they don't need to be profitable right away. As long as it's used by everyone, there's going to be a way to monetize it eventually. People made this mistake with Google. Google was losing money and no one thought much of it, but now everyone uses Google, and then everyone uses Google AdWords, everyone uses like Google this, Google that, and they have their hands in everyone's pockets, and you can't really switch out of it. Twitter's very interesting because a lot of Twitter clones have come out over the years. A lot of people make this funny meme of like, oh, like look at the innovation right now. And they show like 5 different versions of Twitter, but it's just like a different name. And no one uses the other ones. People only use Twitter. The staying power of Twitter, despite everyone saying they're hating it, they stay on Twitter, which is actually incredible. And that's one of the things that like Warren Buffett says of like, oh, it's like a moat or something, or like the brand is so powerful, or like no matter what they do, they can make the price whatever they want and people will still pay for it. So the equivalent of that for Twitter is they can make the experience so bad, but no one's going to switch off of it to a competitor. That's when you realize that something has a lot of value. Then even before that, in like 2015, when the presidential election was happening, and then Donald Trump won, right? And people were saying afterwards like, oh, Cambridge Analytica used Facebook data to like win the election essentially. And then when you hear stuff like that, you're like, all these tech companies, all these social media companies that have all this data on people are able to control who wins the election. And that, how much is that worth? How much is that worth? I would think it's worth a pretty substantial amount. I don't know where the dollar amount is, but it's for sure much higher than $10 billion. If you look at Facebook, because that was the actual company that was used, is it worth $100 billion? It could be. It could be. I don't actually know how much the presidency is worth, but in my mind, I'm thinking it's worth a little bit more than that. And Twitter, being such a small company, quote unquote, even though it's used by so many people, it just felt super duper duper undervalued, even though it was having some rough years. Because again, I bought it at around $16, stayed around $16 for a while. It actually went all the way down to around like $14. I'm just looking at the graph right now. And then it goes on this wild ride throughout the next like 6 or 7 years until it got bought by Elon Musk. So Elon Musk bought it at a price of $54.20. But a couple years before that, the stock was around like 70 again. It reached its peak from its IPO. And that was wild to me because I was like, holy cow, I just like 5x my investment. I didn't sell because I kept buying because I thought it'd be worth more and more. I could go into the reasons why, but essentially what I said before, it's just one of those data companies that it could turn into a Facebook. It's like Facebook's just worth so much more than Twitter because they're profitable and they got a lot of other business segments. But eventually, like, why can't Twitter do the same thing, right? That was my thought process, at least. If it's naive, whatever, don't really care. But then Elon Musk buys it for $54.20. And I was a little sad because did the price go up? Yes, it went up. Before he made the announcement of buying it, it was around like $40. So obviously the price just jumps up to 50 something after he announces he's going to buy it. And theoretically, in the short term, that's great for the stock. But I don't buy stocks to hold for like 5-6 years. So I held this one for like 2016 to 2022. It's around 6 years. I buy it because I see what their runway is for the next like 20, 30 years, or even potentially my whole life. I did not think anyone could usurp Twitter, and I actually ended up being correct because even after Elon Musk took over and everyone hates him now for some reason, Facebook made Threads, which is a direct competitor, and everyone was like, yeah, let's switch over. And there's all the like True Social, Mastodon or whatever. I don't even know how many there are now. No one uses those apps. And I was like thinking, maybe Threads is the winner. If someone's going to do it, it's going to be Facebook, because they have Instagram, and Instagram, they made it so easy to make a Threads account. And even despite how easy it is to get tons of users onto the platform, people still went back to Twitter. Do you know anyone who uses Threads? I personally don't. People were using it that I knew of on the first day, the first week, but then now it's like a month later, maybe 2 months later. I don't know a single person who uses Threads. I don't know a single news station that quotes Threads. Everyone's always x.com, twitter.com, whatever it is. I don't think x.com is a good name, but that's besides the point. But essentially, Elon just like cucked me out of like having a lot more gains in like my future, I feel like, because even though his decisions as a CEO has been controversial, according to the metrics that they have, the site's being used so much, and it keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. And then you look at all these creators on it, and the site's just getting completely big right now. I feel like Elon's gonna cash out hugely from this if he ever like makes it public again, or if he just sells it to someone else, because wow, this platform is like super powerful, and I don't even know fully why, because I have a Twitter account, but I use it more for work, or like work. Is what I do work? Like I just play video games and like make YouTube videos, right? And I don't really like the Twitter app. It's a little like violent. It's a little aggressive on things. But how much is the company actually going to be worth in, let's say, 10, 20 years? It could be potentially like $500 billion. Right now, Facebook is worth what? As of recording, it's worth around $700 billion. It peaked at like 1 trillion. And I'm talking 20 years from now. So that's a lot of growth. Facebook's probably going to be like the biggest thing ever, or it might just go bankrupt, who knows. But Twitter, it's got a lot of room to grow. It got acquired for, I believe, $44 billion, and becoming 44 to 500 billion in the span of like 10, 20 years, 10x growth, that's pretty good, you know? The annual rate of return, if it happens in 10 years, is around 26%, and the rate of return if it happens in 20 years is around 12%. And people think 12% is a low return because they're like, oh, S&P's like 9, 10%, somewhere around there. So like 12% is low. But if you realize that like a lot of the legendary investors that we read about only return like 15% a year, 12% is pretty damn good, you know? And who knows, they might do it in 10 years. We'll never find out, right? But I don't know. I felt a little cheated because I was like, damn, even though Elon bought it and the stock went up, it was kind of like my first baby, you know, and then it just goes away. And the way I learned investing, I read a lot of Warren Buffett's work. I read a lot of securities analysis, all the Benjamin Graham stuff, pretty much all the value investing stuff. And one of the things they say is always look for like the super long term. And I was just denied that opportunity, which was pretty sad. But yeah, overall made around like, I think like 50K from Twitter, something like that. I did the modified Dietz return calculator because obviously I kept buying over and over throughout like those past 6 years. My modified Dietz return, which is like a way to calculate what your return is based on varying cash flows. If you are interested in that, it's kind of a cool thing, but it was around like a 21% annualized return, and pretty good, right? Pretty good. Very nice. I definitely cannot complain about that, but it was only 6 years, man. Okay, the other way Elon made me money was, I think Tesla's a big joke. I'm just going to put that out there. But I have a fun money fund. It's around like 5% of my portfolio. It varies between 1% to 5% of my portfolio, depending on how wild it is. And everyone's allowed to have fun, right? We don't have to be super serious with everything. Well, you should, but like, I can't help it, you know? And in this fund, I do wild options plays. I invest in stocks that I don't normally invest in. And I just threw money into Tesla because it was shifting between, I believe, like $300 a share and $365 a share at the time. And I was just like, whatever, let me just like put some money in there. And then like every time it goes up to 360, I sell. Every time it goes down to 300, I buy. It's very rudimentary. I know, don't do this on your own time. Have a reason to buy something. But I was just like playing around with like some silly technical analysis stuff, which I hate technical analysis, by the way, but it's like astrology, right? So it's like you kind of do it. But Tesla was not in retrograde, and I forgot about it one day because I was too busy working, and then all of a sudden the stock's worth like $1,000, and then I just cashed out another 50K. So he kind of made me 100K for no reason, and then yeah, I bought some Apple calls with that money, and yeah, it kind of disappeared because I was buying leaps, and it was the 1-2 year period of Apple where they did not go up substantially. So a little unlucky there, but Elon himself got me 100K, but potentially cost me maybe 100K or even more than that in the future. But yeah, that's kind of the story of my first big investment, and just thought it'd be fun to share. Obviously, a lot of what I say in here isn't like in-depth financial analysis. It's more like qualitative stuff, but I thought it was just interesting to share. But hopefully some of my other stocks that don't get bought out so quickly, so I could actually ride them into the sunset until I'm like super old or something like that. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this. Should I do more of this stuff? I thought it was pretty interesting, but also looking back at it makes me kind of a little bittersweet. Yeah, that's it for me today. Hope to see you all later.